Hi there, welcome everybody. As you're connecting, if you can just complete the registration form that's popped up if you haven't done so already. It's really important that we get a registration of everybody who's here so that we can properly take a register of your engagement. Likewise, if you could update your name on your Zoom screen, if you can put the name of people in the room and the school, that would be great. If it gets too long, put it in the chat and we can record it there. So I can see Osmani, you've put Osmani ECTs. If you wouldn't mind letting us know in the chat which ECTs we're talking about, that would really help. And also, if I could ask you to have your cameras on, please, that's really helpful as well. It's also a safeguarding issue. We will be having conversations, so we just need to make sure that everybody is in a space where your conversations aren't being overheard by people who shouldn't be listening. Thank you very much. I'm just waiting for a few more cameras to turn on and then we will properly start because it is 1 minute past 4. Okay, we will make a start. So thank you very much, everybody, for being here this afternoon. My name is Ruth Smith. I'm Director of East London Teaching School Hub. And I'll be working with you over the next hour to outline what needs to be done for year 2 and also to set you up with your first practitioner inquiry. I'm just going to spend a few minutes talking about East London Teaching School Hub and how all the different partners working with you fit together. You are moving into your second year of the Early Career Framework as mentors and ECTs. And it's fair to say perhaps this time last year, things weren't as straightforward as they could have been because we were all kind of catching up with statutory changes. But I thought it'd be useful to take a moment now just to kind of refresh our memories about how everything works. So first of all, then, we are East London Teaching School Hub. We are one of 87 teaching school hubs that were designated just over a year ago. And the government have divided up the country into different patches. So each teaching school hub has a different geographical area to be responsible for. So ours is Hackney and Tower Hamlets, but we do have colleagues from other boroughs as well working with us, and that's great. But primarily, our responsibility is to make sure that the Early Career Framework, which is a statutory professional entitlement to ECTs and mentors, is fully accessible to all of our schools in our region. And we also have a responsibility for initial teacher training, the national professional qualification. So in summary, we have a role to play in coordinating high quality evidence informed professional development from every stage of a career. On the screen now is our strapline, if you like. So together, we believe we change lives by providing the highest quality teacher development opportunities. All of the research shows, and you'll be engaging with that as early career teachers and mentors of ECTs, that the biggest difference for student outcomes is at a classroom level. It's what the teachers do day in, day out in the classroom that makes the difference. And so it makes sense that the quality of the professional development that teachers have at every stage of their career will underpin whether that time with students is effective or not. And so we really do think high quality professional development has the biggest impact on outcomes for all children. So we think we change lives, and bearing in mind we serve a very deprived community, we really value and really see the importance of striving for excellence for absolutely everybody that we look after. So the way it works is we underpin our approach with 3 core values. So we work collegiately with a lot of different organisations, and I'll talk about that a bit more. We have 176 schools in our patch. Over 80% are working with us now, so we're working with lots of different schools, but we want to draw on the expertise of all of the specialists in our region. And so I'll talk more about how that happens for the early career framework. We're very inclusive in our approach, both in terms of our belief about education. It should be fully inclusive and all children should strive and thrive. But also we want to make sure that all our colleagues across the patch can access and be part of a community of best practice and professional development. We also are transparent in the way that we work. So particularly a year ago, when things weren't particularly clear, we did our best to try and make sure that any information we received as a teaching school hub was shared with you. But equally, we'll hold our hands up if we don't know something, because we rarely know more than other schools. But we'll do our best to try and help people navigate any confusions around professional development and your entitlements. The word hub is critical in all of this. I'll come back to that again, but we really are just a conduit of connecting lots of different people and lots of different expertise. And it's great to have so many of you on the call today, because this is one way of you connecting with each other. And in terms of the scale at which we're working, I thought it'd be helpful to just take stock for a moment. So your cohort moving into the second year, we have 5 local partners working with us. And for primary, which is the case for today, there are 5 schools or networks that we sort of subcontract, if you like to lead the primary sector, and they're on the screen there. So you will be connected to one of them, and I'm really hopeful that you know which one. So HTSA, Letter, THEP, Primary Advantage, who works with Hackney Education. And you are part of a cluster led by primary specialists with that particular organisation. And we, as East London Teaching School Hub, act as a bit of an umbrella over that and directly work with secondary ECTs and mentors. But the scale is huge. So in 1 year, we've got over 20 school leader facilitators working with us from a range of schools across our patch, 126 schools within our patch. So like I said, that's 80% of schools working with us. And you can see there are over 380 mentors and over 490 ECTs. So you are part of a big community, and we really do want you to benefit from coming together and learning together, because there's real strength of sharing your similarities and differences with a colleague who perhaps is just a few minutes down the road in a different school, but each school has its own unique context which we can learn from. Those numbers have now doubled because we've got our new group coming through, and we've got similar numbers working with us. So we've got about, well, over 1,000 people working on the early career framework with us now. And I haven't even mentioned the national professional qualifications. So it can be a bit confusing around communication. So I'm just going to do a quick whiz through who can help you at what point. So it's probably a no-brainer that the first form of communication is between you right now. So between your early career teacher and mentor, and you should be on the same screen today. That's where you collaborate with each other, interpret the early career framework, follow the material and adapt it so it suits your needs and your particular context. The next port of call is your induction tutor, and I'm hoping second year in, you know who that is. The induction tutor is the nominated senior leader who is responsible for making sure you're registered properly with the DFE and with us, but more importantly, making sure that your statutory entitlement to induction and your statutory entitlement to professional development is as it should be. There is funding that comes to schools for this, and your induction tutor should be making sure that that is used to make sure that you as an ECT or mentor are able to engage with the early career framework. Just a reminder, if you're an early career teacher in year 2, you should have a 5% timetable reduction, and you should have a fortnightly meeting with your mentor. Mentors, you have 18 hours of self-directed study, and your school will receive funding to backfill that. Next port of call, obviously, is UCL. They probably should be higher up on the board, if you like. So they are responsible for the curriculum you follow. You engage with them on a regular basis with the material online, but like I said, it's for you and your mentor to interpret it and adapt it for your own particular context. I also just want to quickly flag that we chose to work with UCL out of the, I think, the 7 lead providers, because they are the global leaders in research education. They've won that award a number of times. And what's really exciting about UCL, and I sit on their governance board and on their research committee, is they are engaging right now in a research project into the efficacy of the early career framework. And you will have received, hopefully, lots of reminders from UCL about a survey inviting you to give some feedback. That's going to stay open until the end of next month. I would really urge you, if you haven't done so already, to complete that survey, because you in effect will be part of research that informs how the early career framework develops, and that in turn will influence national policy moving forward. And that's really exciting. Only UCL early career framework participants get that opportunity. So please, I urge you, if you can find a moment to do that, please do. And then the local cluster kicks in. So you will be clustered into small groups. You'll be led by facilitators from your local partners. So if you're with HTSA, you will have colleagues from HTSA facilitating your sessions when we come together. They're a port of call for information, and the local partner and facilitator, like I said. Then we kick in, East London Teaching School Hub. So we work really closely with HTSA, TEP and so on to coordinate the provision, but that's the kind of a line of communication if you have any issues. And if you have issues about UCL Extend, which I know is problematic, try and follow that line of communication first, because that usually unpicks where the problems arise. So that's a lot of me talking about East London Teaching School Hub and how everything fits together, but I thought that was important just to kind of frame how we're all working together. Moving on today then to the actual learning intentions. So we've covered the first one. I'm going to just give you a moment to read those through, and then we'll crack on. So by the end of today, the main priority is to make sure that you leave this as an early career teacher and mentor with an idea about the inquiry question that you want to focus on for this first module. What I would like to do is just flag up, if you've got any questions, general questions about what we discussed today, pop them in our chat, in the chat. If we're able to answer them in the moment, we will, but if not, we will take them away and respond via email at a later point. So there's always that option if you've got any questions. So moving on then, just a recap of year 2, the programme. You should be familiar with all of this because it's come out in various different communications, but just a very quick whistle stop tour. So if you're a mentor on the call, this is your programme for this year. So a reminder that, like last year, you've got 18 hours of mentor development programme time, and your school does receive funding for that to support you to fully engage in it. Like last year, you have half-termly self-study materials, and they're always found on UCL Extend. So this half-term is week 2. So you'll find it in week 2, so that'll be last week. And each term you continue to have a mentor online learning community organised in local clusters by your local partners. And your local cluster leaders will invite you to those online learning communities. The next one will be in October. What we've changed for this year is last year we offered mentors optional drop-in opportunities to look at the material together. But we've changed that for this year. So we've revised the offer. So helping to focus on supporting your engagement of part 2 of your self-study, which always focuses on the upcoming module. So these are optional. So there's an invitation there for mentors if you would like to come together and do some kind of discussion around how you can support your ECT. That's when it happens, on the 7th of November, and you can do that instead of working on your own. So if you're someone who prefers to work with others, there is that optional drop in there. If not, you'll just do your self-study individually. And as you can see there, that's the flow of the year, so you can see what you need to do. For ECTs, this is your module. your programme for the year. So ECTs, you have 2-hour in-person sessions, one in each of the first 4 half terms up to Easter. And then after that, it will be school visits, and we'll talk about that nearer the time. You continue in your local clusters, and you'll focus on supporting, your clusters will support you on focusing on your practitioner inquiries as we go through. You should have received an email with a full outline of your sessions for the year. You can also find them on our website. There's a digital pack there. And you'll also receive reminder invites from your local cluster nearer the time. You are expected to attend every event, and if you can't, we can advise you on alternatives, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But just a reminder, these are the dates for the first session 7, and I'll give you a moment just to jot it down, hoping you know which cluster you're associated with. And if you have any questions about that, please contact your local cluster lead in the first instance. I can see questions come up about school visits. We'll respond to that in more detail after the event, but it can be done in lots of different ways. So yeah, we'll touch on that a bit later in the year. Okay, so it's important just to flag what happens if you know you can't attend a session you've been invited to, or you miss a session, or so on. So this is what you must do. And this is for both ECTs and mentors for your sessions that you come to us for. So if you know you can't attend a session in advance that you've been invited to, please contact your local cluster leader, because they might be able to offer you alternatives. We've deliberately tried to do it so we have things running on different days. So if you're not able to get to your own cluster, you might be able to join an alternative one, so you get the experience of working together with others. If you miss a session and you weren't able to tell us in advance, your local cluster leader will advise you on how you can catch up in an alternative way. But the best thing is to be in the room with other people. If you keep missing sessions, your mentor and induction tutor will be contacted, and it will be raised with us as a concern, because this is fully funded by the government. It's a statutory entitlement, and if you're not engaging with it, there is an issue there around whether you're engaging with your entitlement and indeed what's expected as part of the induction of an early career teacher. Really though, the key message is the whole point of the early career framework and the millions of pounds that's been invested by the government is for it to make a difference to your practice and for us all to be better teachers as a result. And so you have to engage in it in order for that to happen. So again, enough of that. I'm going to move on now to the actual practitioner inquiry cycle. So I've been talking for a long time. So just to stop for a second, we're going to put up a poll. So Anissa, if you can put up the poll, what we'd like you to do is have a guess. Well, it shouldn't be a guess. By now, you should have engaged with the asynchronous activities, which was a video recording provided by UCL. And you should have looked at the Year 2 handbook. So this shouldn't be too challenging, this poll, but the poll is inviting you to say, what are the stages of the practitioner inquiry cycle and which comes first? So I can see the poll has been launched. Have a go at filling it in and we'll see what the answers are. And do scroll down the poll because there's 2 questions. And just a reminder, if people could turn their cameras on, please, just so we know that you're there and also that you're in a sort of secure space. Thank you. If you're having issues with a poll appearing, sometimes if you go onto the sort of taskbar for Zoom, there's an icon that says poll. If you click on it, it should appear. If it doesn't, feel free just to put it in the chat. The questions are, what do you think are the elements of a practitioner inquiry cycle? So there's 4. And what order are they in? And I'm happy for an open book answer if you happen to have the handbook in front of you. I don't have an issue with you looking and refreshing your memory. Okay, we've had 22 out of 50 responses so far. I'm just going to give it a little bit longer. Okay, when it hits 30, which it has, I'm going to stop. So Anissa, can you just share the poll, please, so people can see the answer or what people have said are the answers? Can people see that or not? Yes, great. So you can see that reflect has been a very popular one. Ask, innovate are following along. And then in terms of the order, which element comes first, ask has been the most popular, which is good to know because that is correct. So we are going to just quickly rehearse this because it is important that we know what the practitioner inquiry cycle is, because it's going to be the absolute foundation of your year. So if you stop sharing the poll, please, Anissa, and we'll just go back to the slides. So a quick reminder then that this is the order. So it starts with ask, moves on to investigate, then innovate and reflect in that order. There may be other language used for different kinds of similar things to practitioner inquiry cycle, and the handbook does talk about the sort of similarities, but this is the language that UCL uses. In terms of how this looks in the year, this is just recapping what was in the handbook, but just very quickly. For the first module, you engage in just the first 2 stages of a practitioner inquiry. So focusing on standards 1 and 7 only, you focus on coming up with a really good question and exploring it. You repeat just the first 2 things for your second module, which is module 7, focusing that time on standards 2 and 3. And it's not until you move on to module 8 that you go the whole way round. And in the handbook, there's a very clear rationale as to why that is the case, but it's about having very low stakes, focused, precise investigations to begin with, where you're just developing, sort of refining and finessing what kind of inquiry questions really do lead to meaningful, evidence-informed changes to your practice. The asynchronous video, if you haven't watched it yet, please do, because it's a really, really good summary of the approach and what matters really. And I don't want to throw on that here. A reminder though of other resources that will help you in terms of thinking about how to frame your inquiry questions and what to draw on. A reminder, as always, about what's on UCL Extend. So you will always have the module summary guide, the module audit, the module trackers and learning logs, all within the module pages. They're all there. You'll be drawing on, because it's a spiral curriculum for UCL, you'll be drawing on your learning from last year and probably from your training year as well, your teacher training year. All of the material for year 1 is still there, it hasn't disappeared, so you can dip back in and look at things if you want to kind of prompt your memory around what to do. And a reminder also that there are the module summary guides, which are great, so you can always look back at the relevant modules from the year before to refresh your memory on what you were talking about last year. But equally, this is an example of what module 6 looks like, the one that you're currently doing. And we're at week 3 for that one right now. So in terms of where you're meant to be up to for now, before you came to today's session, the ideal was that you had looked at the year 2 handbook and that you had watched the asynchronous video. And if you've done that, great, gold stars to you because you're on track. If you haven't, crack on is what I would say. If you're having trouble with UCL Extend, which we know is an ongoing issue, there have been massive problems at a Department for Education level in terms of their DFE portal not transferring over to UCL, and that's the same for all lead providers. But our normal kind of suggestions are, if you're having troubles, check your junk mail first to see if anything's gone there. If not there, you can just go onto UCL Extend and try the reset password function, because that might trigger a new email and you can reset your password. If that doesn't work, please go to your induction tutor, because often we're finding that the email address that was submitted by the induction tutor onto the portal isn't actually your email address. It might just be a typing error or a change. So that's stopping everything. And only at that point, go to your local partner or us, and we'll see what we can do to help. If you haven't been able to find the links to this asynchronous video recording, do dig out the welcome email to today and you'll find it there. So that's just a recap of where we're up to. In terms of for mentors, it would be a case of just having a look at the module audit that's been covered for this module. So the expectations of what should have been done. So last week you should have had your first mentor meeting actually. So your ECT and mentor should have come together, looking at the module audit together, and that helps to sort of focus on what your practitioner inquiry is going to be. You can keep returning to that though through the course of this term. And for mentors in particular, your self-study is found in week 2 of the folder, and it's about educative mentoring models, and that will be very useful for you for this half term too. And you really do need to read that mentors before your online learning community. So that's a lot of where we should be. Let's talk about what we're going to do now. So this is week 3. We're going to look at posing and refining that exploratory research question. We are right now having the ECT and mentor welcome event. We're going to think now about the actual question. So this graphic comes from video 2. So you may have seen it already if you've watched the videos. And it talks about how to identify, first of all, the focus of the inquiry. The idea is that it should be focused on a conversation around something that's going to be meaningful to the ECT. So what's the developmental priority for the ECT? So having looked at the audit together last week, you should have an idea of where would be a good focus for you as an ECT and a mentor supporting the ECT to put your energies. You then hopefully would think about what's going to have the biggest impact on the pupils, the students that you serve. And again, thinking quite precisely about, is there a particular group of students that you want to kind of explore further with? And even better if it aligns with the whole school priority. But the most important thing is that it's meaningful to the early career teachers' development, and that will be very unique to everyone on the call. If you can cover all 3, UCL talk about that being the sweet spot. So that's somewhere really good to focus. It's also important to remember that this first practitioner inquiry cycle is focusing on standards 1 and 7, which are captured in module 6. So that's about high expectations. And I've got to remind myself, and behaviour, managing behaviour. So it should be around that. And that's just a reminder of what the module looks like. So what I'm going to do is ask you in a moment to take 5 minutes with each other to have a look at the focus for your inquiry. So just recap the conversation you've had. Think about what is actually going to be the focus for your inquiry, not the question, but the focus. So I'm going to ask you to just turn your cameras off for 5 minutes. And in 5 minutes, everyone will turn them back on so we can regather our thoughts. There are some examples from the handbook of what an inquiry question might look like. So you can see this one, for example, what do people say about whether the task I set stretch them and are yet are achievable? It signposts the kind of data. It's going to be what people say. So it's going to be conversations with the students, those kind of moments in the corridor, or you just moving informally around the classroom. You know, it doesn't have to be master's level data collection. It's just what's already available for you. So there's some examples. So what we're going to do now, and it's referred to again in the handbook, is the post-it note method. If you've got post-its to hand, brilliant. If not, a piece of paper which you can divide in 3 is fine as well. The post-it note method is this. So on individual post-its or separate parts of the page, you write down 3 questions, 1 per post-it, that link to your focus inquiry. You then circle or underline the keywords on each post-it note. And then using a new post-it note piece of paper, you try and combine the best bits without using and, because if we put and in, you just end up with 3 separate questions. And the thinking about this approach is you're still trying to nail, if you like, what the question's going to be. So if you pose it in 3 different ways, it might help you decide what's the best way to tackle your inquiry, or it might just kind of help you refine it a bit. So this stage is just on a piece of paper without too much thinking, just jot down 3 different ways of posing your focus as a question. So again, we're going to have about 7 minutes, so 8 minutes, so until 4:45, cameras off, playing around with this, coming up with what it might look like as a question. Okay, so I'll see you at 4:45. So we've got things like, how can I support and direct TAs to provide high quality supports? So for that one, is it for particular students you're thinking and so on? So perhaps thinking about how to refine that a little bit more. I'm hoping you're all still there because my computer went very funny just then. To what extent do my reward systems meet the needs of my pupils? Okay, again, you might want to think about, is there a particular group of students, pupils that you're interested in? Okay, some great questions coming through. So the next step is on the screen, hopefully. Okay, so it's thinking about what data you're going to use to explore this question. So you're at the second stage of the cycle. So there's quantitative data that we all know about. So you might have behaviour points or reward systems logged on some kind of system. You might have test scores. You've got the qualitative stuff where you're observing it. There may be interviews. You might have other adults in the room that you could ask to observe and give you some feedback on what they're seeing. And then you've got your pupils' work and score data. But the key thing is with your practitioner inquiry at this stage is it should be naturally occurring data. That's what UCL calls it. It should be stuff that's already available to you. This is not meant to be about you investing hours and hours in generating new data to demonstrate or to test out your question. It's meant to be there already. So would you put in the chat, please, some suggestions of kind of places that you could readily have this data? So thinking about your question, what kind of data may you be using? So by quantitative, what do you mean? What kinds of quantitative data do you have to hand already? Okay, so the pupils were absolutely, yeah, observing the way that they're learning. Yeah, so the behaviour points. I don't know what Class Dojo is. What is that? Feel free to come off mute if you'd like to tell me or type it in. Yeah, verbal responses. Yeah, number of referrals. Yeah. Okay, so you also might want to do things like if you've got a question that's about how pupils feel about something, you might just ask them a question in the lesson and just ask for a thumbs up, thumbs down response from them, just to gather information through your normal everyday questioning. I mean, that's very low stakes, but it's something that you can do straight away in the classroom. You might ask TAs as well to talk to a small group of pupils for you, or you might just sit with a key group during your lesson and ask some informal questions. So, like I said, it's not a master's this, it's about just capturing your naturally occurring evidence data that you can use to inform your thinking. Okay, some great suggestions there. Data is even better if you can triangulate it. So, you know, you might have some pupil data telling you something about particular students, but then talk to them, talk to your colleagues, talk to your TAs and see, does it triangulate what the data is telling you? So once you've got your inquiry question, which I'm hoping you've got by now, and you've thought a little bit more about how you're going to collect the data, and again, low stakes, it's just stuff that should be readily available for you. The next step is this. So in week 5, you have your next mentor meeting, because remember, it's every fortnight. It doesn't really matter if it doesn't fall exactly on week 5, as long as you're meeting sort of once a fortnight, that's good. And in that meeting, the ECT, so ECTs on the call, will bring a simple evidence statement based on what their findings are so far in terms of their investigation, and evidence to their mental meeting of their normal practice. So you're basically just evidencing in a really low stakes way the impact of this inquiry question and your kind of investigation. What kind of questions is it raising for you? What additional information is it giving you about your class that you can respond to? So this is an example of an evidence statement. So I'm going to give you a moment just to read it. And what do you notice about it in terms of the evidence statement? What does it include? Excellent. So someone said it says where the data is gathered from. So yeah, absolutely. So it's evidence-based. It's pupil surveys that have informed this assertion, I suppose. Yeah, it's pupil voice as a form of data. Thank you. There's a bit of triangulation going on as well, isn't there? Because they've talked about what pupils are saying, but also the sort of progress check meetings, and I would assume they're based on some kind of data, the conversations. There's some element of triangulation there. Excellent, thank you, Alex and Isia. Yeah, great, thanks, Grace. And it is linked to the relevant standards. So you are looking at teacher standards 1 and 7 about behaviour and high expectations. So it's in the right area of focus, and it does indeed really base itself on evidence. Now you can see that statement is short and succinct, but it does the job. That's great. So as we've said, it's got evidence from their practice and it's focused on the right things. And that's pretty much the cycle for the first one. You have your question, you do your investigation, you get into the sort of nuts and bolts of what's going on in your classroom. And then when you come back to your mentor meeting, week 5, you have a conversation about this is the evidence I've gathered. And that should lead on to further exploration or refining of your practice. Then you'll meet again 2 weeks later and you report back on what's been going on. So again, here's an example of what that reporting back might look like. So I'll give you a moment to read it. So again, this is low stakes. The time and thought and energy goes into your everyday practice, refining, tweaking what you're doing. It's not about writing a thesis. It's not about doing a formal presentation. Instead, in week 7, it's a conversation. You have your conversation, mentor and ECT together about what you're doing. It is not anything formal. It's not standing up in front of a group of people and presenting anything. So that's kind of this module, and what we've pretty much done today is walked through module 6 step by step. Just a reminder that there are module summary guides that support this overview, and we looked at one of those, just a screenshot of it earlier on. Another document that does support you with your progress through the modules is this progress tracker and learning log, which is in the module guidance section of UCL Extend. Now it's optional, but it's quite a handy way of just tracking, are you doing everything you need to do at the right time in the right sequence? But of course, this programme is designed to be flexible. The statutory entitlement is that you meet on a fortnightly basis with your mentor, and your mentors meet with your ECTs, and that you have your self-directed study. but the practitioner inquiry does allow for a little bit of flex. So don't worry if your mentor meeting doesn't fall exactly at the designated times for the UCL, as long as you're in the correct sort of rhythm and flow, that's fine. The final thing to say is if you want to use this optionals tracker to just kind of keep you both in check, I suppose, and making sure you're on track with everything you need to do, you don't need to share it with anyone. You don't need to send it to us. You don't need to send it to your cluster leads. You don't need to send it to UCL Extend. It's just a tool there to help you sort of self-regulate and keep an eye on where you're at. And remember, UCL Extend doesn't track your engagement. Oh, sorry, it does track your engagement. You have to click submit all and finish for your modules, and that's for mentors and ECTs. Please, 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 please do that, because that's the way that we get a record of your attendance and engagement. Remember, this is a fully funded course, and we have to demonstrate to the Department for Education that you are engaging in the programme that they're funding us partly to deliver, but more importantly, they're funding directly to your schools to let you do it. So please, please, please submit and click, submit and click. It means that your local cluster leads and us don't need to harass you for that. So please, please, please just do that. Right, lastly then from me, oh yes, look, very important icon to remind of the importance of it. Again, just a quick whistle-stop tour of all the different resources that are available to you. Forgive me if you know this already. So we've talked about the Year 2 handbook. It really is great. You can just dip in and out of it. The videos are brilliant, both available in UCL Extend. We've come together today. The date's wrong on that. You've got your self-study material, both of you, to do, ECTs and mentors. Mentors, there's the offer for you to come to an optional do it together session, but that's up to you if you'd like to come, or you can do it on your own. Mentors, you have your OLCs each term, you have your sessions together every fortnight, and you have each other on call, I would hope, at any time. So please do draw on all of those resources available to you to help you through it. Next steps then. It's about identifying any questions you have about the programme which haven't been addressed. So you can pop those in the chat now, or feel free to contact your local cluster lead, and we will try and resolve any of those. Please make sure, I'm hoping this isn't something any of you need to check, but you have a 5% timetable reduction. So sorry, other 5%. Every other week, self-study sessions. So it's a 5% reduction per week. So that should be the equivalent of, alternate compared to last year when you had a 10% reduction. Have a conversation with your induction tutor, because they're responsible for making sure you have that entitlement, and that's for early career teachers. Make sure you've got your mentor meetings booked in, and make sure you've got all the session schedules in your diary. The 5% is on top of what a normal classroom teacher would get. So it should factor in PPA and things like that. So 5% more time than someone who's a full-time non-ECT teacher. Okay. Question there about, should my inquiry question be based on one of the module audit statements? You could, if it's relevant. So just think about that find the phrase a bit kind of cringy, but sweet spot. Think about what your priority is for your professional development from within that set of standards for module 6, so standards 1 and 7, and it could be that you take an audit statement that you think is really relevant to you and work it into a question, or not, as long as it's about that area. And then if you haven't already, please mentors, show your engagement with module 6 self-study on UCL Extend. That would have been last week, so if you downloaded it but forgot to do the submit, click all, please do it. And if you haven't done so already, do watch the asynchronous conference recording. Again, they're there, but that is part of matching and tracking your engagements, because when you do that online, it helps us recognise that you have engaged in the programme. So that's everything from me and us. Thank you so much for your time and your continued support of one another. If you've got any further questions, remember, first point of call is each other, induction tutor, local partner, facilitator lead, and then us. But We have included on that last screen our email address centrally if you've got anything really that other kind of train of communication hasn't worked for you. So do drop us a question if we can help. So lovely to see you all. I hope you have a great next few weeks, and I'm looking forward to hearing from your colleagues and your local cluster leads on how the inquiries go. Have a rest of a lovely evening. And if anyone wants to hang on, I'll be here for a little bit longer if anyone's got any questions.
Should I put my hand up? Yeah. Just say like, hi, Ruth.
Hi there.
Hi, I've got a